Hello, everyone, and happy Friday to you. This is our fourth session on our psychoeducation group for couples. And I'm so glad that you've joined us here today, whether you're live with us right now or you're joining us later, just watching the video. We are so glad that you have tuned in. Really do appreciate you tuning in. Again, I'm Tucker Presley. I've been with you for the last few weeks and will be with you for the next few weeks for this group. Also got a grief group going on Tuesday nights, and love for you to join that as well. If you know anybody who needs to know about relationships or grief, then please send them to our page to watch these videos. And we love for people to tune into these things, because what we want is for people to live healthy, happy lives. And that's what we're trying to help people get to here with Joanna Snow Ministries. And so we hope that you will share these videos and tell others about them. And we hope that they're helpful for you yourselves. And please, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, let us know in the comments. I think these are posted on YouTube, Facebook, and on X. And so if you have any comments, questions, let us know. You can also contact us directly here at Joanna Snow Ministries. And again, we want to help you if you have any counseling needs, and if you want counseling for anything, please let us know. We've got a great team here that can help you out. Again, really glad that you're with us for week 4. First 3 weeks, we talked about attachment styles. Then we talked about building friendship in relationships and romantic relationships. And then last week, we talked about love banks. So if you want to know anything about those 3 topics, go back to those videos. They're on our pages, YouTube, Facebook, and X, and share those with others as well. But let's move on to today's topic. Today, we are going to be talking about communication and conflict management. And this is something that is very pertinent to just about anybody. And this is kind of one of the things that couples want to talk about. One of the main things they want to talk about when they come in. You know, in my just about a year here with Joanna Snow Ministries, I've seen several couples, and just about every couple that I have seen comes in wanting to work on, at least in part, communication and conflict management. And in many cases, that's the number one thing they want to work on, is how do we communicate better? We can't even talk together. Like, how do we work on this? And so this is one of the main things that we see. And I've also seen, obviously several individuals, just counseling one person. And many times, these people are in relationships, married, engaged, dating, and they want to know some of these skills. How do I communicate with my significant other? Even if their partner's not in the counseling session with us, they still want to know, how can I work on this with my partner? And so we work on this type of stuff all the time. It's one of the things, I'd say one of the most often seen problems here in the counseling room is communication and resolving or managing conflict. That's one of the main things that we work on with people. So hopefully something in this video could be helpful for you today to help you with communication and conflict management in your relationship. So where I would like to start is actually just looking at different communication styles. So for the next several minutes, my objective here is just to help you understand that not everybody communicates the same. And I wanted to start here because I think we may know this subconsciously and may bring it to awareness every now and then, but it's not in the forefront of our minds all the time that, okay, the way that my spouse or my partner communicates, my boyfriend or girlfriend communicates, is a lot different than how I communicate, or could be a little bit different, at least from how I communicate. And realizing that, just realizing that not all people communicate the same is really important. And it's important to recognize your communication style and your partner's communication style, how those might clash, how those might be harmonious, how those might interact. So I just want us to understand that there are differences in how people communicate. And this can play a really important role in how you are communicating with your partner. So I just want to look at these different communication styles as we start, because people are different. We have different ways of communicating. If we don't recognize that, then we could run into some problems. So hopefully you can get some good understanding about your communication style and your partner's communication style. So generally speaking, there are four communication styles. Some groups list five, but I'm just going to go with four here because I think the fifth one that people throw out there is the manipulative communication style. I think it could really be absorbed into the one we're going to talk about here in a minute. But the first one is passive communication. So people who have a passive communication style, they typically are resistant to honestly sharing their feelings, thoughts, and desires for fear of conflict. These people, they're afraid of conflict, they're afraid of disagreeing, and so they don't openly and honestly share how they feel, what they're thinking, what they desire. So, if you think about somebody who has a passive communication style, that could lead to a lot of misunderstandings because this type of person is not going to openly share exactly how they're feeling. This type of person may get stepped over, may get walked over by other people because they're afraid of actually sharing what's going on inside because they don't like conflict, they don't like disagreements. It makes them uncomfortable, makes them a little shaky, and so they just avoid it. And so they just to avoid that conflict, they don't share exactly how they're feeling. And this can lead to some misunderstandings because they're not exactly expressing what they feel. They're not exactly expressing how they think and their wants and desires. And so that can be hard to kind of move along in a conversation with someone who does have a passive communication style. So that's the first communication style. And think, do you have that passive style? Does your partner have that passive style? I'll be honest, sometimes the passive the passive style is kind of what I fall in. And I'll say this, I think you can kind of overlap in some of these. You don't just have to stick to one. You might have some overlap, but typically people fall into one of these. Me myself, I don't like conflict. It makes me feel awkward. I don't like being at odds with people. So sometimes I just resist sharing how I actually feel like within a conversation or something like that because I feel like I may stir the pot or something like that, and I don't want to do that. So I sometimes will tend to just not share exactly how I'm feeling because I don't want to get in conflict with others. I don't want there to be any disagreement with others. I've gotten better with that, but still sometimes I find myself doing that. Um, and your opinion's valuable. Your feelings are valid, and so we need to be able to share those. And we'll get to that here in a minute. So passive is the first one. The second one is aggressive. The aggressive communication style is basically the exact opposite of the passive. These people will express their thoughts, feelings, and desires in a hostile, argumentative, and/or intimidating manner in order to quote unquote win. These people see arguments or disagreements with others as an opportunity to win. Like, I've got to win this argument. I've got to win this conversation. And so they will dominate it and they'll do whatever they need to do to express how they feel, even if it means being hostile, argumentative, or intimidating. So these people, they don't mind insulting. They don't mind tearing others down. They don't mind being hostile. They'll just kind of hop right in and they'll be very argumentative and they want to intimidate you so that they can win. That's their objective, is winning the argument. So conflict does not bother these people. Disagreements do not conflict, disagreements, uncomfortable situations. This does not bother them. They'll hop right in and they'll do what they can to win. And they're good at arguing. So these are the aggressive style. These people who are very much into arguing and conflict, and they'll do what they can to win the argument. That's the aggressive style. Now, then there's the passive aggressive, right? And we've heard of passive aggressiveness, right? These type of people, they may seem passive at first and all innocent, but really deep down, they're really aggressive. And inside, they've really got some hurtful things on the inside about others. So these people express their thoughts, feelings, and desires in a hidden manner. Again, maybe hidden, may seem like they're okay, but truly they're sarcastic and condescending. And so they may spread rumors about people, gossip about people. They may come off sarcastic and condescending, like it says there. And you guys have probably seen this before. Someone who really is hiding their sarcasm and their condescending nature. But you can pick it up, right? And then there's a lot of passive aggressive people out there. It's one of these communication styles, people who are passive aggressive. Now, think about these last two styles. If you're in a relationship or you yourself, you're aggressive or passive aggressive, right? How's that going to go over in a relationship with somebody? Right? If you're aggressive and all you're trying to do is win an argument, you're going to tend to walk all over your partner. You're going to tend to really pick at that partner and try to draw those arguments. If you're passive aggressive, you're going to basically not come off as strongly as an aggressive person, but you're going to just kind of slide it in there, right? Slide that aggressiveness in there, slide that sarcasm and condescending nature to other people, and that's just not healthy, right? Like aggressiveness, passive aggressiveness, you really don't get anywhere with those styles. And even with the passive, you don't really get anywhere because you're not truly saying what you feel. These are all unhealthy patterns of communication, right? But some people fall into these. And sometimes you may fall in like the passive, but then sometimes you may just get on edge and you might get aggressive, right? And these are unhealthy communication styles. But it's important to recognize, where do I fall here, right? Am I a little too aggressive with how I express my needs? Am I passive aggressive where I am aggressively sharing how I feel, but it's kind of in a hidden way? Or am I just passive, right? I'm not really sharing how I feel and I'm just kind of hiding exactly what I want. And that leads to misunderstanding. Where we want to get to is the assertive communication. Right, the assertive communication, these people can clearly and directly, they're clearly and directly expressing their thoughts, feelings, and desires without being hurtful. These people are comfortable articulating exactly what's going on inside in a very open and honest way. It's not passive aggressive. It's not aggressive. It's not passive. It's just assertive. It's, here's how I feel, and this is why. And it's just being open and honest about it. These people are comfortable going to people directly and just kind of telling them what's going on. They don't shy away from feeling from how they feel and what they think, but they also are not going to try to walk over people. They're not going to try to domineer over people and be, or to try to condescend others or be sarcastic. They're just going to open and honestly share directly how they feel. And that's where we want to get to, is to be assertive, is to get to a point where you can openly and honestly share how you feel without hurting somebody else, without hiding exactly how you feel. And you can work your way to this. It's just, you got to be intentional about it and really kind of think about, okay, how do I communicate? What's my style? And being open and honest with your partner about where you're at. And we can work our way to that assertive communication where we both openly and honestly agree. Listen, let's just talk about this. Anything that we talk about, let's just be open and honest about it. Let's be clear. Let's be direct without hurting one another. So an example of this is given typically in like the workplace, just kind of putting all this together. Let's just say that, and we can apply this to relationships here, but this is kind of an example in the workplace of these communication styles. Let's say that you were offered a promotion, but there was another person in your workplace who was also offered that same promotion. So what was going to happen is you two were supposed to come up with this big presentation, your ideas for, the company moving forward. And whoever presented the better, presentation was going to get that promotion. So you got to work for months and months on this. They set a date for the presentations, and you worked your tail off trying to get a really good presentation together. You're studying day and night. You're putting this thing together, and you feel really confident in your presentation going in. Well, you find out the week of the presentation that the other person who was going to be possibly promoted here, who got this opportunity, had been stealing all that you had prepared. Somehow, some way, they had been spying, or they had, got a jump drive or something like that, got access to your computer, and they had stolen all of your stuff. And they got to present first, and they go first, and everybody's, really, really excited about this. So a passive person in this situation would just kind of let it happen. And for fear of conflict with this person, they just let it go and not say anything about how they truly felt, not just be open about it. They just kind of let the person walk all over them and win, so to speak. The aggressive person might right then and there during that presentation, or in front of everybody before the presentation, call that person out and insult them and kind of put them down. That's what an aggressive person would do. A passive aggressive person might first just kind of let it happen, let it play out, but then may go and tell everybody in the office, like spread some rumors about what had happened and gossip about the situation and that person. An assertive person would go directly to that person who stole all their information, who stole this opportunity. They'd go straight to them and tell them exactly how they felt. They would directly and honestly tell them, without being hurtful, without being disrespectful. They would just share, hey, here's what you did and here's how that hurt me, right? Tell them exactly how you feel. Hey, what you did, I really didn't appreciate that. I don't think it was right. And I really think you stole this opportunity from me. That's being assertive, going directly to that person, not spreading the rumors, not letting that person walk all over you, not ridiculing the person or hurting the person. It's just going to them and openly and honestly sharing how you feel directly. So that's kind of how those communication styles play out, I guess, like in an example. But you can think about in a relationship, right? These things can apply. Like if there's an argument or something, being passive and not sharing exactly how you feel, that could be a problem, right? That could be a problem and lead to some misunderstandings. Being aggressive, you could easily hurt your partner. Being passive aggressive still could really hurt your partner, even, kind of in an even more damaging way when you're trying to hide it, but you're really coming off aggressive. Where we want to get to is be assertive, where we can both share, here's how I feel, here's what I think, and here's what I want, in an open, honest, unhurtful manner. So those are the communication styles. What is your style, right? What is your style? What's your spouse or your partner's style? I also want to say something very quickly about personality. Okay. This is so very important. People have different personalities, and the odds are that you do not have the same exact personality as your partner, right? And our personality simply does affect how we communicate, right? It does. How we are inside, our disposition, how we carry ourselves, our personality, it affects how we communicate with other people. Here's a simple example. Think about this. An extrovert is obviously going to communicate much differently than an introvert. I was listening to a podcast earlier this week, and somebody, the host of the podcast, said that an extrovert is going to talk while they think. They're just going to kind of let it come out. An introvert is going to think before they talk, right? There's two different communication styles there, right? An extrovert's a little bit more outgoing. Well, probably a lot more outgoing, loves to be around people, feeds off people, and they just kind of will jump into the conversation. An extrovert or an introvert is somebody who's going to, it may take them a little bit of time to warm up. They may think about what somebody has said before they just jump right into the conversation. So it's important to understand. That's just one example, by the way. There's many other examples we could throw in here about personality. Like think about the Myers-Briggs test that comes up with a lot of different areas of your personality. So this is just one example. But you think about if your spouse is an extrovert while you're an introvert, right? Or your partner is an introvert while you're an extrovert. That's something important to think about. That like an introvert, right? They may need some time to think before you jump into a deep conversation, right? And so just thinking about the differences in your personality is really, really important, because this is going to really affect your communication patterns. And so come to understand how your partner communicates their personality. It's going to be really, really important. And I think this is where a lot of misunderstandings come with couples, is that you simply don't understand how your partner communicates, their style and their personality. So get to know that and tailor your approach to one another, right? Understand that, okay, if my spouse is an introvert and I'm an extrovert, I'm going to give them some time to think before we jump into this, right? Things like that. If your spouse is an extrovert, well, maybe give them some time to just kind of talk about it, right? And meet them where they are with what they want to talk about. Okay. So, anyways, there's a lot more here that we could talk about. We're going to move on because we're already at 20 minutes and I'm moving slowly here. What I wanted to talk about next is what we call the four horsemen. And I don't know if you could see that there, but the source for this is Dr. John Gottman. I think I've talked about him in some previous sessions here in the previous weeks. But Dr. John Gottman is probably the foremost relationship expert in the world, the entire world. He has done years and years of research for couples. He's written a book on couples, written articles on couples, got a website called Gottman.com. The Gottman Institute is, this basically organization that John Gottman has created for relationships and marriages. So the credit goes to him. And there's that source down there, Dr. John Gottman on Gottman.com. So he has come up with what he calls the four horsemen. And these are four communication patterns that are going to basically devastate your relationship. He calls them the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So if these four things are a part of your relationship and your communication patterns, they are going to spell doom for your relationship if you don't do something about them. These are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Again, Dr. John Gottman's research here. So let's go over these four horsemen. And what I'd like for you to do, I go over these with every one of my couples that I see. Try to put yourself, in this spot. Like if you were in the counseling room here, okay, which of these four horsemen are part of my relationship? Which four of these do I do? And maybe you do all of them. Maybe some of these are all of these are a part of your relationship. Maybe one or two. Try to identify what patterns are in your relationship, right? What unhealthy patterns. And then next we'll talk about the antidotes to these four horsemen, the ways to fix these four horsemen. Okay. So number one is criticism. Okay. These are harsh and or hurtful expressions of disapproval aimed at a person's perceived flaws. So basically, criticism is when you are kind of focusing on the person rather than the problem. And so an example that we could give here would be something like, you come in, the house is a wreck, and you say, "You're such a slob. You never do anything in this house," right? You've just criticized your partner in that example there, because you called them a slob and you've basically said that they don't do anything. They don't contribute to anything in the house. So you've criticized them, right? And that is not helpful, right? To criticize somebody. Nobody likes to be criticized. Now, what we're not talking about is constructive feedback, right? We all need constructive feedback at different times. This is different. Criticism is basically aimed, again, notice there, it's harsh or hurtful expressions of disapproval or judgment aimed at somebody, at a perceived flaw you see in them. So you're really attacking them here. All right. And nobody likes to feel attacked. Nobody likes to be hurt or be treated harshly. And so this is something that can happen in a relationship. We start criticizing each other and we start attacking one another a little bit. And this is not helpful. So is this a part of your relationship? Do you see times when you criticize one another? We need to work on eliminating that. And we'll talk about those antidotes here in a minute. The second one is contempt. And contempt is, to me, similar to criticism, but it's kind of up a notch. It's up even further than criticism. So this is attacking someone's character or sense of self with hostility by using insults, sarcasm, disrespect, and more. So this one's when you're really attacking someone deep down, right? You're really hostile here. You're really trying intentionally to insult them and to hurt them. And this shows up in things like sarcasm, disrespect, even things like eye rolling. You're showing contempt for them when you roll your eyes. You're basically saying, "I don't care about what you're saying. It's completely wrong," right? That's contemptuous. And what we're really contempt kind of related to hatred. And so it's things like that when you are, intentionally insulting your partner, being sarcastic towards your partner, demeaning towards them, disrespecting them. These are hurtful, right? And again, these cut even deeper than the criticism here, and it's kind of attacking that sense of self or somebody deep inside who they are, their character, and so this could really, really be hurtful, right? So is contempt a part of your relationship? Are you contemptuous in your relationship? Do you attack each other's character? Is there insulting? Is there sarcasm? Is there disrespect going on? That's contempt, right? And obviously, I think you understand this type of behavior needs to be eliminated. The next one is defensiveness. And I think we know what this is, but it's really, really important to go over. Defensiveness is deflecting responsibility and refusing to accept feedback. So this is like not being willing to say that you've done something wrong, like not being willing to take any part in the responsibility for the problem, right? Or it's refusing to take feedback. Remember, we said there's a difference between criticism and constructive feedback, right? If your partner tries to give you some constructive feedback, like genuinely saying they'd like for you to work on something, and you get defensive about it, it's, well, hey, you did this time, or, well, hey, I'm not the only one that does anything wrong, right? You're refusing to accept the responsibility, and you're going to try to throw blame on somebody else, right? That's what defensiveness is. Okay. And again, if you're defensive, then you're never willing to accept anything that you've done wrong, or anything that you've done to contribute to the problem in the relationship. And so nothing's ever going to be worked on, right? Because if you don't think you have any problem in the relationship, then you're not going to work on anything, right? Because you don't see that there's a problem. So defensiveness it really is trying to throw everything else back on your partner, right? It's, well, you did this, or, well, you did that, or, no, I didn't really do that. It's refusing to accept that responsibility and throwing the blame on someone else, refusing to accept that feedback. That's defensiveness. And sometimes that shows up. And for many relationships, the last one is stonewalling. And this is the one where I think a lot of people probably say, really, that's not helpful. So um, I'll get to that in just a second. But this is emotionally withdrawing or shutting down during important discussions or disagreements. Where I think people say, really, this is like, I feel like this could be helpful is some people would say, like in a really heated discussion, well, I'm just going to walk away from it, right? I'm just going to step away, right? That's what I need to do because we're getting too worked up and we're getting too heated, and I'm just going to withdraw or shut down or not respond, right? The problem with that is this, that when you withdraw or you completely shut down during these important discussions or disagreements, the wounds are just left open, right? The problems are just left on the table. You don't address them, right? So you just walk away or you just withdraw, then right, you're not addressing the problems. Now, what I'm not saying is that you can't withdraw for a little bit, right? That you can't agree with your partner to separate for a moment when you're getting heated and then come back in a minute. In fact, that's the antidote for this one, and we'll get to that in just a second. When it gets real heated, there does need to be a little bit of a break, but we cannot shut down. We can't emotionally withdraw to where we never address the issues or the difficulties in a relationship or talk about the deep things in a relationship. Okay. So stonewalling is dangerous because we build up this wall and say, nope, I'm not talking about this anymore. Nope, I'm not going to be invested in this discussion. And the important things, the disagreements, the conflicts, they just left on the table. They're just left out to dry, and the wounds are still open, and you just don't address them. We can't just let it fester and simmer. We've got to address the issues head on, right? So that's really, really a problem when you stonewall and just shut down because you're not addressing the problems. So we'll get to the antidote on these now. All John Gottman has come up with these four horsemen, but he's also given us some tips for, okay, how do we fix this? If we have criticism, if we have contempt, defensiveness, stonewalling, what do we do to fix it? Well, for criticism, number one, it's gentle startup, a gentle startup. This one is so very important. In fact, I think it really goes with all of these, but a gentle startup is handling problems in a calm and gentle way from the start and focusing on the problem, not the person, right? So many times, folks, how we say something is just as important as what we say. How we say something is just as important as what we say, right? And so think about that example that I just gave you a few minutes ago. Remember when we were talking about criticism? The house is a mess. You say, you're such a slob. You never do anything in this house. That's criticism. A gentle startup approach to this would be focusing on your needs, right? John Gottman is really big on what he calls I statements. Instead of focusing on the other person, you're such a slob, you never do anything. Focus on how you feel about the situation, right? So a gentle startup would be, instead of you're such a slob, you never do anything, it's I feel frustrated when the house is a mess. Would you mind doing the dishes tonight? Or would you mind cleaning with me? Right? See how much different that is than you're such a slob, you never do anything? Right? Saying, I feel frustrated when the house is a mess. Can we clean or could you do the dishes? That is much easier to handle than you're such a slob, you never do anything in this house. Because you know what you've done? Number one, you focused on how you feel, not what you think about the partner, not throwing shade at the partner. You're focusing on your feelings, number one. And number two, you've thrown out a solution gently, right? Would you please do the dishes or would you please clean with me, right? And the focus is not so much on the person, it's on the problem, right? It's the house is a mess, not you're such a slob, right? I feel frustrated when the house is a mess. That's the key issue. It's not the person, right? It's not attacking the person, it's attacking the issue at hand. So a gentle startup is so very important. So from the beginning, try to focus on how you're feeling and expressing a need in a gentle way. That's what we're talking about here. This could really put out the fires of criticism when you have a gentle startup. Okay, really important. The antidote for contempt is building a culture of appreciation. Now, this is easier said than done, and this takes time, but it's regularly showing that respect and appreciation for one another, right? When you build that culture of appreciation, you won't want to be contemptuous or hateful towards one another. So this looks like regularly telling one another that you love each other, regularly telling one another that you appreciate one another, regularly complimenting one another, regularly showing that you recognize what your partner does in the relationship, right? So many times we can get caught up in focusing on the negatives, focusing on what our partner hasn't done or isn't doing, right? Instead of focusing on what they have done, what they are doing. Folks, most of the time, there is something that you could pull out. There's something that you could focus on that's positive in your partner. So do that. Create that air of appreciation, of the atmosphere of love and respect in the relationship. Because when you do that, when you're building that, when you've built that culture of appreciation, of love and respect, you won't want to be hateful to one another. You won't want to be contemptuous to another. That doesn't mean that you won't slip up and say an insult or something like that or be sarcastic here and there, but you won't want to, and you'll feel a genuine sorrow when you do. But it's building that culture of appreciation. So start regularly showing that respect and appreciation to one another. Again, this is easier said than done, especially if you're in a cycle of being at odds with one another. But folks, it's hard work sometimes. Right? I tell my couples, it's going to take work. It's going to take effort. And so building that culture of appreciation really important here for putting out the fires of contempt. Defensiveness, much easier said than done here, but it's taking responsibility. At some point, we have to own our behavior without blaming, and we cannot take feedback personally, right? Many times when somebody tries to give us personal feedback, we may take it personally and as an insult when it's not meant to be, right? And many times when we're in a heated discussion or there's a disagreement, what we want to do is we want to blame the other person, and we don't want to accept, you know what, I did do something wrong here, right? I did see where I did mess up. Here's the thing. In a relationship, typically when there's an argument, it's never one person's fault entirely, right? Typically that's the case. Now, I'm sure there are some examples where that there is an argument or a disagreement that one partner did something really, really boneheaded and it was just all on them. But for the most part, most of our arguments, disagreements, it's both of us. Both of us have contributed to the problem. And so we've got to own up to our own behavior, right? We've got to stop focusing on our partner and start looking inside and thinking, okay, what did I do wrong here? What did I do wrong? You know what? They're right. I did do that. And it's okay to say that. It's okay to say, you know what? I did hurt you. I did say something very hurtful. So we've got to be able to take responsibility to own up to our own behavior without blaming our own partner. Here's the thing. When we come to recognize our own behavior and not blame our partner, it's actually going to help the disagreement, the conflict. It might actually, for a change, if you for a change actually own up to your behavior without blaming your partner, they may realize, oh wow, they did that. You know what? I've actually done something wrong here too, right? It's such a better way to resolving conflict than being heated and being defensive. Is just owning up to your behavior. You know what? I did do something wrong here, right? And even if your partner doesn't own up to their behavior, you've done your part, right? And I know it's so hard that you want to point out, or you want to win, or you want to point out their contributions to the problem. But what we need to start focusing on is ourselves. I try to tell my couples all the time, you can't change your partner. You cannot change what your partner says, what your partner does. You can only change your behavior, right? And so you've got to decide, I'm going to be better. I'm not going to be defensive. I'm going to take responsibility and see where it goes from there. Okay. Stonewalling is the last one. We've kind of already talked about this, but you got to practice self-soothing. So instead of withdrawing completely and shutting down, when you find yourselves getting heated or you find yourselves being flooded, and typically that's why people want to shut down and withdraw, is because they're so overwhelmed with emotion. And so they just withdraw and they stop talking about it. Instead of doing that, take a few minutes to slow down, do some deep breathing exercises, go outside and take a walk, pop in some AirPods or something and start listening to music. Take a few minutes to slow down and then come back to the discussion when you've cooled down, right? You've got to agree with your spouse, with your partner. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break and then we're going to come back and finish this, right? Practice self-soothing and really self-soothe, really breathe. Some people like to do the 4-second method, where it's 4 seconds in, hold it for 4 seconds, and breathe out for 4 seconds, and try that over and over. Apple Watch has a breathing app where you can practice breathing. Whatever it may be, just take a moment to soothe, really think about what's happened, and then go back to it. You find yourself getting heated again, well, self-soothe again, right? Do what you need to do to have the conversation in a gentle and calm manner. All right. But what you can't do is stonewall and just let the problems go unresolved and just let them simmer, let the wounds be open. Okay. Practice self-soothing, come back to it and talk about it. So these are the 4 horsemen and their antidotes. And if you just type this in on the internet, 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in relationships, you're going to find all types of graphics, all types of articles, not just on Gottman, but on all types of platforms. You're going to find these. It's everywhere. And there's some really good graphics out there. And we share this with all of our couples because it is so very important. So what I'd like for you to do, take a look at these for a second. what do you find in your relationship? Is there criticism? Is there contempt? Is there defensiveness? Is there stonewalling? Is there one of these? Is there two of these, three of these, four of these? And take the steps you need to take to fix them. There's the antidotes right there. Gentle startup, build the culture of appreciation, take responsibility, practice self-soothing. Those are the four horsemen. Now, let's talk about managing conflict as we end here. Let me just go ahead and say that the four antidotes that we just talked about can be so very helpful for managing your conflict, right? Those things can really, really help, right? A gentle startup can help manage that conflict. Practicing self-soothing can help manage conflict. We'll even talk more about that in a second. Those antidotes. But I want to talk about some other things as well. And again, a lot of this stuff is going to come from Gottman. There's going to be some other things here at the end that are not from Gottman. But let me just say some things about conflicts or problems in a relationship in general, okay? According to John Gottman's research, okay, this is all from Gottman, about 70% of a couple's problems are perpetual. Now, let me explain what I mean by this. What John Gottman really means by this, actually. 70% of a couple's problems, John Gottman says, are problems that are going to always be a disagreement or something that you can't see eye to eye on. There 70% of our problems, our disagreements are 70% are perpetual. These are things that you two are never going to see eye to eye on. There are things that are deep differences with you. Like these are not just like trivial matters. They're really just things that you just disagree with on a fundamental level. Okay. And so you're never going to see eye to eye on them. 70% of our problems are perpetual. Now, some people look at that and they say, are you serious? 70% of the things that we disagree on are going to always be there, we're always going to disagree on them. And so they feel kind of defeated about that. Others on the other side say, you know what? I'm not alone in this. We're not alone in this. Because here's the thing. It's not just you. It's 70% for all couples. Even the ones that have good relationships, 70% of their problems are perpetual. So on the other side, some people look at this and they say, wow, okay, so other couples are dealing with disagreements. Like we're disagreeing too, so that means other people are. Here's the thing though, okay? It's how we handle these disagreements. That's the issue. So look at this quote from a man named Michael Fulweiler, and this is on Gottman.com. This is on Gottman's website. He's just a contributor on that website. He says this: what matters is not solving perpetual problems, but rather the effect with which they are discussed. The goal should be to establish a dialogue about the perpetual problem that communicates acceptance of your partner with humor, affection, and even amusement to actively cope with the unresolvable problem rather than allowing it to fall into the condition of gridlock. So let me explain that quote from Michael Fulweiler on Gottman's website here. What Gottman says is it's not a bad thing that you and your spouse are going to have disagreements, that you disagree about things. Because here's the thing, we will not see eye to eye with everybody, right? So we're going to have disagreements. That's not the issue. The issue is, how do you handle the problems? How do you handle the things that you disagree about? How do you handle the things that you don't see eye to eye on? What ends up happening for a lot of couples is the four horsemen come into play that we just talked about, that they're criticizing each other. They're throwing out insults and being hateful towards one another. They're being defensive with these disagreements. They're stonewalling with these disagreements. And they end up entering into this condition called gridlock. And gridlock is a problem where you just feel like you're spinning your wheels and you're getting nowhere. You argue about these things over and over again, and it's just conflict, and you never get anywhere with it. What Gottman wants couples to get to is to a place where you can just dialogue about your problems openly, right? You're going to disagree on things, but you know what? That's okay. Let's just talk about it. Let's just dialogue about it in a healthy manner. Let's just talk about it. And even, you know what? Be humorous, or even have amusement when we talk about our problems, and always show affection. So what he wants you to get to is a point where you can dialogue and talk about your problems without getting so heated. Really, that's kind of the summary of it. That's easier said than done, but that's where we got to practice these antidotes for the four horsemen. Okay, and that's where he also gives some other tips on this, from managing these conflicts, from managing your problems. Okay. Again, you're not going to ever solve some of your problems. In fact, John Gottman says 70%, you're not going to solve them. They're always going to be disagreements. So we just got to learn how to manage them. Right. So number one is accept your partner's viewpoint. Folks, I cannot explain how important this one is. Because what ends up happening is we tend to get into an argument, and we tend to um, basically say that our viewpoint is right and that our partner is wrong, right? And it's our way or no way. Our way's right, your way's wrong, your way's dumb, it's stupid, so on and so forth, right? That's not helpful. Right? We've got to get to a point where we can see our partner's point of view and actually come to understand where they're coming from, because their opinion matters as well. It's not just our opinion that matters, it's our partner's opinion that matters too. So, a couple things on how to do this. Number one, actively listen to your partner. Actively listen to your partner. What is active listening? Well, we do this all the time as counselors. We actively listen to our clients, and that is, you are intensely listening and following along with every word that your partner is saying, right? In a session with my clients, I am trying my best to actively listen. I'm not always perfect with it, but I'm always trying to track what they're saying. So I'm head nodding. I'm saying, okay, giving them those minimal encouragers. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, right? You're following along closely with what your partner is saying, as closely as possible. And what can even help with this, and too important in this, is eye contact. You're listening to what they're saying. Your eyes are on your partner. But here's what you could do too. When your partner is done speaking, that's important with this too, not jumping in, not interrupting, listening to your partner until they're done. Then you give them basically back, you repeat back to them, in other words, what they just said. Basically paraphrasing. I heard you say that you don't like when the house is a mess and that you'd like me to clean up a little more. Did I get that right? That's what you need to do, right? That's active listening. Here's what you can't do. And here's what ends up happening a lot of the times is, when our partner's talking, we're waiting for our turn to cut in. Or we're instead of actually listening to what they're saying, we're looking ahead to what we can say. We're looking ahead to, all right, I've got a good argument for that, or I've got a good way to counter what she just said, instead of actually listening to what they just said. Because when you do that, whether you realize it or not, when you're jumping ahead or to what you might say, or you're trying to cut in, you're not actually listening fully to what your partner's saying, right? So actively listen. That's going to help you accept your partner's viewpoint, right? It might send up a light bulb in your mind. Oh, that's what they mean, right? So actively listen. Secondly, on this, understand that it's okay to disagree. It's okay when you get to the end of a discussion, or even in the middle of a discussion, to say, I don't agree with that, right? Here's the thing. For some reason in our culture, we've gotten this idea that if we disagree with people, if we disagree with others, that means that we don't actually love them, or that we can't get along. And that's just not true. It's okay to disagree, right? What's not okay is to disagree in a disrespectful manner, right? So I have heard someone say, it's actually a preacher said this, that it's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to be disagreeable. In other words, it's okay to have your own opinion and to disagree, but it's not okay to have a disagreeable attitude, and to be disrespectful in your attitude. So it's okay to not see eye to eye all the time with your partner's viewpoint. Okay. But what's not okay is being disrespectful about their viewpoint. And that's kind of the next point here is understand that your partner's feelings aren't wrong, right? It's okay to disagree, but it your partner is not wrong in how they feel, right? So if they feel a certain way, if they feel hurt, if they feel frustrated, if they feel sad, if they feel angry, they're not wrong for feeling that way, right? They are entitled to their feelings, to their thoughts. They're entitled to those things. And if they feel a certain way, who are we to tell our partners that they can't feel that way, or that they're wrong for feeling a certain way, or wrong for thinking such and such a way, right? Your partner has a right to their opinion, a right to their feelings, and that's not wrong. So you don't make them feel wrong for the way that they feel, for the way that they think. Accept their viewpoint, accept their influence on the relationship, right? So these things can help you get to that point. It's okay to disagree, but not to be disagreeable, to be disrespectful. And it's okay for your partner to have feelings just like you do. Okay. So accept your partner's viewpoint. Um, Next, dialogue about problems. And we've kind of already talked about this. I won't stick on this long, but that is just talk about it. Don't get so worked up. Don't get so heated. Just talk about it. Like just have a conversation like you're talking about basketball or a movie you went to go see or a vacation you went on. You talk about those things. Talk about your problems. Talk about the things you disagree with about or disagree on without getting so upset. But when you do, practice self-soothing. When you find yourself getting heated in a discussion, take a break for just a minute and come back, right? Go off and breathe. Go off and read a book. Go off and watch a funny video. I don't know, but come back and talk about it. So practice self-soothing. I'm adding this last one, but find compromise. Find compromise. When you get into a relationship and you get into these disagreements, into these arguments, sometimes it's easy to say it's my way or no way, right? You have to see it from my point of view, or we have to do what I think is the solution. But you don't have to always insist on your own way. You don't always have to do what you want to do. It doesn't always have to be your way or no way. You can find compromise, right? You can find middle ground. And we kind of talked about this in the last session with the last week with the love banks, where you're trying to brainstorm solutions together for your disagreement. What are some things that we can do to find the middle ground? We may not agree 100% on this, but we can compromise. We can meet on middle ground, right? Compromise. Be willing to compromise. Be willing to meet your partner somewhere in the middle. Now, this is so very important because it's easy to insist on our way and think that our way is the only right way, but your partner may see it differently. And so brainstorm about some things that where you can meet in the middle, compromise with one another. So that is really, really important. I want to say this, and I tell my couples this. You are on the same team, right? As a couple, you're partners, right? You're confidants, you're friends. You are a team. You're not against each other. You're not enemies, right? You are partners. And so work together as partners, work together as a team, like a sports team. They're supposed to work together to accomplish a goal. That's you and your spouse. That's you and your partner. So act as a team, right? Sometimes we get into this mode where we start seeing each other as enemies and as someone to just disagree with, to pick a fight with. No, you're partners, right? You fell in love for a reason, right? You got in this relationship for a reason. Think about those things. Think about being a partner, being a team together. There was some more things I wanted to get to, but we've run out of time here. I've gone about 55 minutes here, and I want to let you go. I was going to give you a few more tips for managing conflict, but just go type in conflict management online, and there will be a lot of relationship tips, a lot of good articles that you can find. In fact, I don't even think the slide popped up that I had added on here about some extra tips. So it kind of worked out anyways. But hey, I really, really, really appreciate you tuning in. I really do. Thank you so much. And if you're finding this helpful, please let us know. Please pass it on to somebody. But I hope that you can take these tips to communicate more effectively and to resolve or manage conflict a little bit better in your relationships. But thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a blessed weekend. And hope to see you, or I hope you'll tune in here in the following weeks.